We're now on Daf Mem Vav Amud Beis, and the Gemara quoted a pasuk to prove that an Esan in the Torah language is a sela, meaning a very strong, hard boulder. So the ground of this valley has to be very strong, very hard. And not only that, the Brisa quotes another pasuk from Micha, Shivu Harim Esriv Hashem, V'haisanim Moste Eretz. Hear, O mountains, the controversy of Hashem, and the strong ones, Esan, the foundations of the earth. So this part of the pasuk defines Esanim as the foundations of the earth. And that's like a mountain that's made up of hard stone. Acherim Orim, another interpretation is Minayin li Esan shu Yashan, that the word Esan means ancient, Shenemar, as the pasuk says in Yirmiyahu Novi, Goy Esan hu Goy me'olamu. It is an Esan nation, it is a nation from the beginning of the world. So according to this Tana, the word Nachal Esan is a valley covered with soil that's been there since the creation of the world, so to speak. In other words, it's not soil that was transported from another location. But our Mishnah defines Esan as hard, and that reflects the first interpretation offered by this Bryce. The Mishnah says V'orfin Osan B'kofitz. Kofitz is translated here as a cleaver, right? That's a knife that's used by butchers to cut meat. Me'achorel, from the back of the neck of the calf. My taima. How do we know that it's from the back of the neck? Gomer arifa michata sa'ov. Okay, this is a very, very important line in the Gemara. The Gemara has Gzeira Shava from the word arifa, chata sa'ov. Okay, this is called Malika B'chata Sa'of, and it needs arifa. And that means that you do the arifa from the back of the neck of the bird chatas. And that's the upper part of the back of the neck. In English, it's called a nape, N-A-P-E. And the cutting off of the head of the egla rufa, which is also called arifa, and has to be done, as we said, with the kofitz, is also going to be performed at the nape of the neck, the upper part of the back of the neck. Now, after the arifa, Makoma, the Mishnah says, the place where the arifa was implemented is Asur milizroa umila aved. You're no longer allowed to plant there or work there. We'll see that the work means the work in the ground, not the work on top of the ground. You could clean your laundry on top of the ground. That's not a problem. We learned a machlokas between Rabbi Yoshi and Rabbi Yonasan recorded in a Bryce. And we start with the sheet of Rabbi Yoshi. Asher lo ye'aved bo, v'lo yizoreh. Says Rabbi Oshia, this is a condition that has to be met, a requirement with regard to the makom, the place that is roi for arifa. And it's got to be a place and he's interpreting it in the past tense, l'sha avar, that has never been used for zriya or for avoda. Avoda means in the karka. So according to Rabbi Oshia, the word ye'aved bo, or the word yizareah, is referring to the past, which is very problematic because Rabbi Yonasan makes a lot more sense. Lahava. Ye'aved bo is in the future tense. And it's telling me that after you did the arifa in this place, in this valley, with hard rock, you're no longer allowed to do avodah there. Rava Amar Lahaba de Kuliyam Lo Pligi. Rav Oshia does never disagreed with Rabbi Yonason that for the future you're not allowed to do the avodah Nizriya in the Nachal Eisan after the Arifas Ha'egla. Tichsiv Lo Yizoreah. Right? It doesn't say Lo Yizra in the past; it says Lo Yizoreah in the future. Ki Pligi Lisha Avar. Rabbi Yoshia is the one who holds that in order for the makom to be kosher, to be roy for a rifa, it's got to be a place that was never worked in the past. Rabbi Yonason doesn't require that. He's only interested in the Isul of future, which even Rabbi Yoshia agrees. And the Gemara explains Machlokas. Rabbi Yoshia Sovar Miksiv. It doesn't say in the pasuk Nachal Eisan Lo Ye'ubad Bo, which would certainly indicate in the future. But rather it says Asher Lo Ye'aved, meaning in the past it hasn't been used for avodah. Rabbi Yonason, he holds Miksiv Asher Lo Nevad. If it was referring to the past, it would have to use the word Nevad, and the vav of after the ayin would be totally superfluous and misleading. And the Torah says Lo Ye'ubad, and Lo Ye'ubad means in the future. Rabbi Yoshia, so why doesn't he agree to the argument of Rabbi Yonason and be midayik from the language Lo Ye'aved in the future tense? And the Gemara answers Asher Lo Ye'aved. The word Asher is not a language that's appropriate for a commission, a mandate for the future, tzivut. If the Torah was only commanding you not to do this avoda subsequent to the arifa in the future, then it shouldn't have added the word Asher. Asher is a description of something based on its past. And therefore, l'sha'avar mashma. For Rabbi Yonason, the word Asher is not to tell you that it's referring to a description of the past, and this pasuk is only a tzibur on the future, but rather Asher ribuyehu. It's coming to be marba other avodos that are asuros. In other words, if we would have just said zriya, we would get the impression that you're allowed to do other avodos like harisha, but it says Asher as a ribu. And the Gemara is going to explain this as we go along. The Mishnah says, Mutal lisrok sham, pishtan, ulenakir sham avanim. It's permitted to comb flax there and chisel stones there. Tana Rabbana, we learned in a brisa, Asher lo yavid bo, v'lo yizoreya bo. Eli elazriya, shar avodas minayin. So I think what he's saying here is it's a klalu prat, ein b'klalu masha b'prat. So when it says lo yavid, it's only referring to zriya. Tamalom Asher lo yavid bo, mikol makom. All avodas are prohibited. No, Cain Matamaloma lo yizore. Lo yizorea is a prat that tells us that only Zriya is also. Lo malacha mazriya miuchedeshi begufa shel karka af kol every single avodashi begufa shel karka asura yotza srika pishton unikar avonim sheina begufa shel karka. So the Gemara asks the following question: do you have another klal after the prat? If not, then only zriya is prohibited. Zriya. And the Gemara answers Asher. The word Asher is a ribui. So we have a klal prat uklal, Any avodah that's similar to Zriya is prohibited. The Mishnah says, Ziknei ha'ir rochatzin yedeihem. Just 1 second. Who are the Ziknei ha'ir? Just 1 second. L'chora. Just want to clarify one thing. Ziknei ha'ir is not referring to Bezdin, I don't think. Let me just see. So I'm gonna assume the following. Remember, we said that we needed members, representatives of the High Court of the Sanhedrin, whether it's 3 or 5 judges, but that's only for the Horada, to bring down the Eglah roof into the Nacha. But in the next stage, which I assume is Kriya, let me just make sure. Second. Rechitzas Yadayim, and then you have the Kriya. So that's Ziknei Ha'ir. That's already the local Bezdin. Oh, right. There are 2 Batei Dinim. There's the Sanhedrin, and that's for the process of Horada. And now we have the local Bezdin in the city, because you remember we said that the Medida only applies to the closest city that has a Bezdin. If it doesn't have a Bezdin, then it's not included in the Medida. She'ein Talmud Lomar Ha'arufa. Yeah, here he says it. Ziknei Osa Ha'ir Rochatzin es Yedeim b'mayim b'mokom arifa shala egel v'yomer yadeinu lo shofta. So now we're talking about the local skenim of the city. I'm not even sure if it's a bezdin. It could be all the skenim in the city, whether they sat on the bezdin or not. He quotes the Rambam. The Rambam says it's the bezdin of that city. So that seems to be an issue, whether we're talking about the bezdin of the city or all the skenim of the city. Because the pasuk says v'chol ziknei ha'ir. So the word v'chol, I think, goes way beyond just the bezdin. Hahi akrovim el hacholol yirchatzus yideim al ha'egla ha'rufa b'nacha. So the pasuk says that all the elders of that town, meaning the town that's closest to the corpse, shall wash their hands over the calf that was decapitated in the valley. She'ein Talmud Lomar ha'arufa. There's an extra word in the pasuk. We know that we're talking about an egla arufa. That's the entire parsha is talking about. Ma Talmud Lomar arufa. What do we do with the extra word arufa? Al makom arifasa shel egla. That the rechitzas yadayim has to take place at the very same place where they did the arifa. So let's say they move to a different site, you could wash their hands there. So the extra word arufa is teaching me that in the place where they did the decapitation, that's where they have to wash their hands. The Brisa also shebezdin shofchei damim hem. So now he mentions Bezdin. Interesting. Before we said it was called Ziknei Ha'ir. Now he mentions specifically Bezdin. So there's a double language here. it says in the pasuk, Yodenu lo shavcha, and then it says Einenu lo ro, and that's a double possibility. Number one, maybe we would have let this sojourner go by out into the wild, blue, dangerous yonder without any food. And of course, he's desperate, so he attacks people to get food and they kill him. Or alternatively, we didn't leave him without an escort. We're going to have a whole sugya now about Levaya. Tanya Yerab Meir Omer Kofin Levaya. We could force a person to escort his fellow Jew from the city. And we're going to see exactly how far this goes, how far of an escort. And it would seem that the elders of the city, or maybe the Bezdin in the city, are required to see to it that people will fulfill this obligation of Levaya, to escort a traveler. And it's a mitzvah of Gemilas Chasadim, but it goes even beyond the mitzvah of tzedakah and chesed. I mean, it's so fundamental, as we'll see. Sheschar Levaya ein lo shir. Right, there's no limit to the reward. I don't know if that is an explanation why Kofin Levaya, or the two separate statements, Kofin Levaya and Schar Levaya in Lashir. If it's an explanation, it means that we prove that the reward is so great. It must be that this mitzvah is so important and so critical, and that's why Kofin Levaya. Shenemar. Are we up to Elisha yet? Just 1 second. Sorry, give me a second to get my bearing here. No. We're not up to Elisha yet. We're up to a parsha in Shoftim when Ephraim and Menashe are attacking Beit El, and a certain Knani is going to help them. Vayiru Shomrim Ish Yotze Meneir. So those who are surrounding Beit El, ready to attack, they see a Knani who goes out of the city. Vayomer lo Arenu na es mevoir. Can you tell us where is the entrance into the city so that we can attack the city? V'asinu imcha chesed. They promise him some sort of reward. Uksiv. So he complied with their wishes, and now they owe him chesed. And this is similar to Levaya. Levaya means we want to make sure that the traveler doesn't lose his way. And so this man, this Knani, helped him find the way. What was the chesed that they repaid him? They destroyed the entire city. Also, he and his family were the only survivors. And this man built a city, the city of Luz. So the pasuk says, Ad hayom hazeh, indicating that this city lived and continued to exist forever, and it was never destroyed. Tanya, we learned it right. Say he lushet sovim ba tchelis. This is the city where they made a lot of money by receiving tchelis and dyeing cloth with tchelis. He lushet ba sanchev bilbala, even though Sancheiriv was mevalbel all the umas olam, he didn't touch Luz. Nebuchadnezzar lo chriva. Even though Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the nations, but he did not destroy Luz. If you're inside the walls of the city of Luz, or inside the boundaries of the city of Luz, you are protected from death. Wow. I want to find this place. Let's say an old person who's really in bad shape. My wife yesterday read me parts of an article in Mishpacha magazine about a Shliach Chabad who has the worst. Anyway, he can only move his eyes. At some point, he really wanted to end his life, meaning tell them stop giving him the treatments. So Bisman Shedaita and Kotzalev Yotzim Michutz Lechom Veimesim. Yeah, it loses a walled city. You leave the walls of the city and you die. The whole discussion here in the Mefarshim, why that's not called suicide. What did he do? He just pointed to the Shar Ha'ir, to the Mavoa Ha'ir. Told the Shomrim where to find it. Garam Hatzola Lo Lizara Hatzokal Adoros. Is Kavachomer Lemishosa Levaya Beraglo. If he takes the time to escort you by walking with you, we'll see how far he has to walk with you. Shal Kalachas Kamakama, how much Hatzlocha and Hatzola and a reward for him and his generations. But Meh Herolahem, how did he actually, this Knani, show them the way? He just moved his mouth in a way that they understood. That's called, the Pasuk says, Vayar Eim. Rabbi Yochanan Omar be etzba herolem. He showed him, he pointed it with his finger. Tanya Kvasa Rabbi Yochanan b'shvil sheknani zera be'etzba garam atzol lo u'lezaro ad sof hadoros. If a person is out there in the road and he has no one to escort him and protect him, Yasok b'Torah. Shenemar, why is Torah going to protect him? Because the pasuk in the first chapter of Mishlei says, Ki livyas chen heim l'roshech v'anokim l'gegrosecha. But they, meaning the words of the Torah, are a gracious accompaniment for your head and chains around your neck. One traveling alone is in particular need to find grace in the eyes of those who he meets on the highway, so they will not harm him. And the words of the Tfilas HaDerech is, give us grace in your eyes and in the eyes of all those who see us. Right, what's the Hebrew translation? Ube'ene kol haroim, it says there. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. B'shvil arba psio shel liva paro li Avram shenemar vayetzav alav paro anoshim. Paro appointed people to be malave Avram when he sent him off together with his wife. And in that schus of that escort, which is 4 psios. Now, how do we know it's 4 psios? Just one second. He says here in the name of Tiferes Tzion that since the pasuk doesn't mention how far they escorted Avram, presumably they escorted him 4 amos, which is the equivalent of 4 psios, 4 steps. That's the minimum distance of escort. Right? The Chofetz Chaim writes in his Avas HaChesed that if he can't escort the guest when he leaves, then at least give him the skula power of Arba Amos. And as a result, the Shtabdu B'Bonov Arba Meo Shana. Shenemar Vavadu V'Ino Sam Arba Meo Shana. And this is a pella. I mean, why? We know the Gemara gives us in the Dharma a whole bunch of reasons for the Golus of Mitzrayim. Now we're saying it's because of the schus of Paro. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi does not mean to say the subjugation was decreed upon the descendants of Abraham because of Paro's escort, but rather the subjugation was inherent and it was already formulated in the Brisbane of Besorim Parshas Lech Lecha. Hashem did not tell Avram which nation would dominate his children, and it need not have been the Egyptians. Paro, by virtue of fulfilling the mitzvah of escort, gained this power for his people. This will protect his friend from any harm. Ravina alvie l'Rav bar Yitzchak ba'amos be'ir and motoli dea zeka ve'itzel. During his journey, Rava encountered a potentially harmful situation, and yet he was saved because Ravina's escort. A teacher to a student he's got to be Malavis student up to the Ibur Shel Ir. Ibur ha'ir hu merchak shivim ama ushnei shlish ama misof ha'ir erchid afnun zayin lo michutz l'chomas ha'ir ha'omim sheyesh batim b'tchum zeh v'nechshav oso mokom kechelik ma'ir. So it's beyond the walls of the city, 70 2/3 amma. That's a Rebbe to a Talmud. Where am I? L'chaver, let's say for an upstanding Jew, ad tchum Shabbos. What does this mean? Second. Still didn't get to Alicia yet. Just one second. He says a friend to a friend up to Tchuma Shel Ir. 2,000 amos, right? Some say that the word chaver refers to a Torah scholar. So this is a longer trip, so to speak, because we're not talking about a Rav to a Talmud. Rav to a Talmud gets an abridged Ibura Shel Ir. Now, Talmud l'Rav is the most severe or extreme requirement, ein lo shir. The more he's malav him, the greater his schar. The kama, what's the minimum amount that a Talmud is required to be malav his Rebbe? Rav Sheshat Parsa. A parsa is 8,000 amos past the city limits. Rav Muvak Shlosha Parsos. If it's his Rav Muvak who taught him how to learn Torah, all the foundations he got from that Rebbe, then Shalosh Parsos is the absolute minimum. Beyond that, he gets schar. Rav Kana Alviyel Rav Shimi Bar Ashimi Pumnara Ad Beit Sinyoso de Baba. And he took him to a place that has a lot of dekolim. Kimotala Hasam. When they got there, Rav Kana and Rav Shimi, Amalei Rav Kana turns to Rav Shimi and he says, "Vade damrisi hanitzi nosa debov mishnei adam arishanisnu." Is it true what they say that these date trees date back to the time of Adam Rishon? Amalei, Rav Shimi responds to Rav Kahana, Adikartan Milsa, you reminded me of something. The Amar Rav Yossi, Rav Chanina, a statement I heard from Yossi, Ma'idich Siv. What does the pasuk mean? The Eretz lo avar ba ish v'lo yashav adam sham. In a land through which no person had passed and where no man, meaning Adam, settled. There's a superfluous phrase here. Once you've told me that no one passed there, so why do you have to tell me that no man settled there? If no one passed there, obviously no one settled there. Where could anyone have settled there if no one passed there? So why did the Torah have to add? Why did Yirmiyahu have to add Shalo Yasha? Ella, but rather, Eretz Shegazol of Adam Arishon Yishuv Nisyavsha, those lands that Adam Arishon decreed should be for settlement, would eventually be settled. Eretz Shalo Gazol Adam Arishon Loshav Lo Nisyavsha. But lands which Adam Arishon did not decree they will be settled were never settled. So therefore, someone who says that these Dekolim date back to the time of Adam Rishon, he doesn't mean that these date trees, these date palms are so old, but he means that Adam Rishon had already decreed that this makom would be settled with Dekolim. Wow. The power of Adam Rishon. Rav Mordechai Alvei Rav Ashi Mihagronia Viad Beikipi Viamile Ad Beidura. And I'm not exactly sure what these distances are and why the Gemara has to tell us these facts. Okay. Now we get to Elisha. Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Meir Kol Sheina Malave Mislave Umislave Keilu Shofet Domin. I'm going to prove to you from the story of Elisha and the Na'orim Ketanim that if you don't escort someone, or if you're traveling and you're not escorted, then that is kaput. And whoever does not escort a traveler, it's as if he sheds blood. And if he himself is traveling and he's not escorted, it's as if he sheds his own blood. Why? Elisha lo gera dubim letinokos. Right, so this is after Elisha miraculously cured Naaman by transforming the bitter waters of that nar to make them drinkable. And Elisha was accosted on his departure by a group of youths, or maybe they were older people, but they were acting like youths, who ridiculed him. And as a result, Elisha cursed them. Okay, I'm not sure exactly why they deserved to die, but 2 bears appeared from nowhere. They attacked a group, killing many of them. And Rabbi Meir said, had they given a levaya to Elisha, and the notables of the city would escort Elisha, then these young children, these whippersnappers, would never have ridiculed Elisha, and they wouldn't have died. Shenemar vayal mishon beis el, v'hu ole baderech, and the orim ktanim yotzu min ha'ir vayikalsu bo. Right, they derided him. Now, the pashtus is that Elisha was bald, and they made fun of his baldness. But Chazal understand it differently. That means you've snapped our source of livelihood away from us. In other words, they used to bring water because the water was undrinkable, and that's how they survived, because the inhabitants of Yericho would pay them because the waters of the city were bitter. Now that Elisha had miraculously converted the water to drinkable, they no longer had a source of livelihood. And that's called the Krachta Oleinu Es HaMokum. My Na'orim Ketanim, there's a steer in the Pasuk. The Pasuk describes them as Na'orim, who are already after Shtei Saras, and Ketanim were before Shtei Saras. Amar Rabbi Lazar, Shemenu Orim Min HaMitzvos. It doesn't mean here that they were little children. It doesn't mean that they were Na'arim. They might have been mature people, but they were like Na'arim in the fact that they were empty of mitzvahs, and they were like Ketanim Shoyim Ketani Amuna. They didn't have any faith. If God could bring about this miracle, then God could certainly support them. They didn't have that faith. I still don't understand why they deserve to die. But anyway, Tana, Na'arim hayu bizbizu atzmam kiktanim. Although they're called by the pasuk Ketanim, it means they demean themselves by acting like little children. The Maharsha takes this literally, that they mocked Elisha like little children. They were youths, but they were similar to children. Just as a child does not realize that his mother acquires the means to support him from elsewhere, these youths whose mockery of Elisha indicated a lack of faith, believed that their livelihood derived from their efforts, and they did not believe that ultimately it was God who provided for them. Okay, this is a chiddush of Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky. Maskif la Rav Yosef Dilmal Shem Makoma. Maybe the word Na'arim is not describing their age, but maybe they lived in a place which was called Na'arim. One second. What's the name of the place here? Oh. Milok Siv. Don't we have a pasuk in Malachim Beis? Va'aram yotzu gedudim va'yishbu me'eretz Yisrael nara ktana. V'kashalon nara uktana. What is this language of nara uktana? V'yomer Rabbi Pedas ktana demin na'oran. That the word Nara means the city from which these girls came was called Na'oran. That was the name of the city. So she's called a Nara because she comes from Na'oran. But she's really a Ktana. So let's say that these Na'orim Ktanim were really Ktanim, but they came from a city called Na'oran. And the Gemara answers, Hasam lo mefarish makoma, hacham mefarish makoma. There, Rav Pedas tells you what place they came from, namely Na'oran. But here, it says, Na'orim Ktanim Yotzim Me'ir, they came from Yericho. So we know where they came from. Now, the next part of the pasuk says, Vayifen Achra Vayir'em, Vayikaleim B'Shem Hashem. Okay? So the Gemara, I think, is going to ask our question. This is as far as I got in learning yesterday 2 blot Gemara, the Shabbos blot and today's blot. So the Gemara says, and Elisha turned around and he saw them and he cursed them. Ma ra. What did he see? So in the Masechet, he says, Asur lekalel Adam Yisrael. There must so there must have been some justification for Elisha's behavior in cursing these youngsters. Amar Rav, Ra Mamish. Okay, is this going to be the Gal Shalat Somos? Let me see. Anyway. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel Kol Makom Shenosu Chamei Nehem. O Misa O Oni. When the Chachamim set their eyes upon someone, then it either causes death or poverty. So they could set their eyes upon someone for the purpose of exacting punishment, and the effect is devastating. Elisha's actions were not motivated by a personal desire to avenge his honor. This man of God certainly would not have transgressed the Torah's prohibition about taking revenge. Rather, by criticizing Elisha's curing of Jericho's bitter waters, they were in effect criticizing the Almighty, whose will Elisha was fulfilling. Elisha was not at liberty to overlook this slight to God's honor. Furthermore, by criticizing his actions, these youths had undermined the moral authority Elisha required to influence the nation positively. Elisha was left with no choice but to punish them. I'm still not happy. Ushmuel Amar, and Shmuel says that when it says Vayir'em, it doesn't mean literally Vayir'em. Rosh Kulam Nisabra Bahen Iman B'Yom Kippurim. Their mother became pregnant with them on Yom Kippurim. In other words, there was a violation of the Isur of Tashmish on Yom Kippurim, and that's how they came to be. But he says in the name of the Ben Yehoyada, Shedivir Rabbi Yitzchak Nafka, Remuzim V'Mila Vayir'en. All right, wait, we didn't get to that yet. I'm sorry. Paisa Kabbalah B'Yad Shmuel, Shenis Abra Ima V'Yom HaKippurim, Ubir HaBen Yehoyada, Shedivrei Shmuel, Remuzim V'Mila Vayir'en, Sherosh Imam Chata, B'Yom HaKippurim. All right. I don't know. This is metaphysics here. Rabbi Yitzchak Nafka Beloris Ra Lahem Ke'amorian. Right? He saw their haircut. They had long locks of hair like the Amorian. It was a pagan custom to allow the hair on the back of the head to grow for an entire year before cutting it. This hair is known as bloris. It is forbidden for a Jew to grow his hair in the style of the pagans. So they violated the Isser of the Chukoseim. I don't know why they deserve death for that. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Rosh lo hoisa behem lachlukis shel mitzvah. They had no trace of a mitzvah. So they deserve the punishment, and there's no mitzvah to mitigate the punishment. B'dilma b'zarayu nehevahava, but perhaps their descendants, there could be those who would fulfill the mitzvahs. So Elisha should have spared them because of that possibility. He perceived that there was not a trace of a mitzvah, neither in them nor in their descendants, till the end of time. Whoa. That reminds me of, Rashi on Vayifen Kovacho, when Moshe Rabbeinu killed the Mitzri. Vateitzeno shtayim dubim min hayar, vatavrakeno mehem arba u'shnei yiladim. 2 bears came out of the forest and they tore apart 42 children. 42 children were killed. And Rav and Shmuel have a machlokas here on Daf Mem Zayin, Chad Omar Nes Echad, v'Chad Omar Nes B'toch Nes. Okay, so that in Mirz Hashem we'll pick up tomorrow. Thank you for bearing with me. I know we went over time, but this is a lot, to cover in 1 hour. I think we did a decent job. Okay, have a great day. Thank you so much.